She didn't even try to hide it. She just stood there, holding the envelope, laughing like it was a joke. And then she looked at me and said, "Are you seriously doing this over a few $100s?" But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because when I picture that moment now, it feels louder than it actually was. Like everything had been building to it for a long time, and I just didn't hear it coming. Or maybe I did. I just ignored it. There was this one small thing, though. The morning after everything happened, I remember seeing a plain white envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. No name on the front. Just there. I didn't think much of it at the time. I should have. "Hi, I'm Emma." I didn't think I'd ever say this out loud. Not because I was protecting anyone. I think I just didn't trust my own memory of it. Like if I said it, it would sound exaggerated. Or worse, petty. Because it was just money, right? That's what I kept telling myself. Even now, part of me wants to shrink it down into something easier to explain. But it wasn't just money. It was my son's birthday. And, I don't know, that feels important. He turned 5 that week. 5 is one of those ages where everything still feels big to them. Like, the candles matter. The wrapping paper matters. Who shows up matters. And he had been talking about this one toy for months. Not even something expensive. Just something he saw once and couldn't forget. I remember thinking how easy it would be to make that day feel perfect. Not fancy. Just safe. Happy. Normal. We had the party at my mom's house. Which, looking back, might have been the first mistake. But at the time, it felt practical. She had the bigger space. A backyard. Enough chairs. And she insisted, in that way she does where it sounds like help but doesn't really leave room for you to say no. "It'll be easier," she said. "I'll handle everything." And I let her. Because that's what I always did. The day itself was actually nice. That's the part that still confuses me. Kids running around, too much sugar, balloons that kept drifting into the neighbor's yard. My son laughing so hard he kept losing his breath. There was a moment, I remember this clearly, where he ran up to me, face red, hands sticky, and said, "This is the best birthday ever." And I believed him. I really did. People brought cards. Some cash. Small gifts. Nothing unusual. I had this little system, just something simple, where I kept all the birthday money in one place. A small blue envelope in my bag. I didn't count it right away. I didn't feel the need to. It felt safe. We were at my mom's house, surrounded by family. Why wouldn't it be? I think that's the part that's hardest to admit. It never crossed my mind that I needed to protect anything. Not there. Not from her. The party ended slowly. You know how those things fade out. One family leaves, then another, kids get tired, decorations start looking a little sad. My mom was in the kitchen, already cleaning before people had even fully left. She does that. Moves on quickly. Like the moment doesn't get to linger. At one point, I remember going inside to grab my bag. Just to check on things. Not because I was worried. Just habit, I guess. And I saw it. The blue envelope. Still there. I didn't open it. I didn't count anything. I just looked at it for a second, then zipped my bag back up. Everything felt normal. That night, my son fell asleep almost immediately. He didn't even change out of his shirt. I sat next to him for a while, just watching. I think I was trying to hold on to the feeling of the day. Like if I stayed there long enough, it would settle into something permanent. Something safe. I didn't check the envelope until the next morning. And even then, I almost didn't. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, still half asleep. My bag was on the chair. And something, I don't know, something just nudged me. Like a quiet thought. Just check. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even suspicion. Just a pause. So I opened it. And at first, nothing felt wrong. That's the weird part. Because I didn't know how much was supposed to be there. So when I saw the cash inside, my brain just accepted it. Yeah, that looks right. It took a second, maybe longer, for the feeling to catch up. It was lighter, not empty, just lighter. And I remember standing there, holding it, trying to do this quick mental math I wasn't prepared for. Like, okay, who gave what? How much was there supposed to be? And I couldn't land on a number, which made it worse, because I couldn't prove anything. Not yet. So I told myself it was fine, that I was overthinking, that maybe people just gave less than I expected. that it wasn't a big deal. And this is the part that still makes me uncomfortable to admit. I let it go. Just like that. I closed the envelope, put it back in my bag, and went about my morning like nothing had happened. I wonder if I was the only one who just accepts things like that, even when something feels off, even when you know, deep down, that it doesn't quite add up. Because that wasn't the moment everything broke. It could have been, but it wasn't. Things stayed normal. Or at least, they looked normal. My mom was still helping, still calling, still acting like nothing had changed. And I played along. Because I didn't have proof. Because I didn't want conflict. Because part of me was still trying to convince myself there was nothing to find. But there was one thing. Just one. That kept coming back. A small detail I couldn't shake. The way she looked at me that morning. Not long. Not obvious. Just a glance. And then she smiled. A little too quickly. At the time, I ignored it. Now, I think that might have been the first real answer. I just didn't know the question yet. The thing about my mom is, if you only met her once, you'd probably like her. She's organized. Always doing something. Always helping. She's the kind of person who remembers birthdays without reminders and brings extra food just in case. People love that. And for a long time, I did too. Or at least, I thought I did. Growing up, she wasn't loud or aggressive or anything obvious like that. It was quieter. More like, she decided what was right, and everything else just slowly adjusted around her. If I disagreed, it wasn't a fight. It was a look, a sigh, or that one sentence she used all the time. I'm just trying to help you. And somehow, I'd end up apologizing, even when I wasn't sure what I did wrong. After I had my son, things got closer. Too close, maybe. I was 21, still figuring things out, still trying to prove I could handle everything on my own. And she stepped in. At first, it felt like relief. She helped with babysitting, groceries, even small things like organizing his clothes or picking out what he should wear. She said it was because she wanted to support me, and I believed her. But there were moments, small ones, easy to ignore, like when she'd rearrange things in my apartment without asking, or when she'd say, "You'd lose your head if it wasn't attached," in that joking tone that didn't really feel like a joke. Or when she'd correct me in front of other people. Little things, like how I packed snacks or what time my son should nap. Nothing big enough to call out. Just enough to make me second-guess myself. And I did. All the time. After the birthday, everything looked the same on the surface. She still called me every morning. Still asked what I needed. Still said things like, "Make sure you don't forget his vitamins." Like I was one step away from messing everything up. And I nodded along. Even when something in me had started to shift. I didn't bring up the money. Not that day. Not the next. I told myself I needed to be sure first. That accusing her without proof would just make things worse. And honestly, I wasn't even sure I wanted to know the answer. A few days later, she came over unannounced. Which wasn't unusual. She had a key. Actually, wait, yeah. That was probably another thing I should have paid more attention to. I don't even remember when I gave it to her. It just became normal. She walked in like she always did, calling out, "Emma," before I even had time to get to the door. My son ran to her immediately. He loved her. Still does. And she knelt down, smiling, hugging him like nothing in the world could ever be wrong. She brought groceries. Said she noticed I was running low on essentials. I hadn't said that, but I didn't question it. I just said thank you. At one point, I was in the kitchen putting things away, and she picked up my bag from the chair. The same one. The one with the blue envelope. "Still haven't sorted through this?" she asked. Her tone was light, casual, but something about the way she held it, like she already knew what was inside, made my stomach tighten. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Just instinct. "I've been busy," I said. She opened it. Just slightly. Not enough to really look. Just enough. Then she closed it again and handed it back to me. "You should keep better track of things like this," she said. Still smiling. Still gentle. But it didn't feel like advice. It felt like something else. That was the moment I almost said something. Almost. I could feel it sitting in my throat. The question. The accusation. Something. But I didn't. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was reading into things. That she was just being her. And she stayed for a while after that. Played with my son. Watched TV. Talked about nothing important. Normal. Everything felt normal. Too normal. After she left, I sat there for a long time. Just thinking. Or trying not to think. I kept replaying that moment in my head. Her opening the bag. The way she said it. You should keep better track of things like this. There was something in that sentence. Something I couldn't quite grab onto. Like it meant more than it sounded. And then another thought hit me. Quiet. Uncomfortable. How did she know I hadn't already checked it? That was the first time the doubt felt real. Not just a feeling. Not just a maybe. Something sharper. But even then, I didn't act on it. I didn't check cameras. I didn't confront her. I didn't do anything. I just sat there, trying to convince myself that there had to be another explanation. That it couldn't be what it looked like. Because if it was, then it meant something I wasn't ready to say out loud yet. And this is the part where I feel a little stupid, honestly. Because looking back, it seems so obvious. All of it. The comments. The way she moved through my space. The way she talked about things that weren't hers to manage. It was all there. I just didn't put it together. Not yet. There was one thing, though. One small detail I kept coming back to. It didn't make sense at the time. Still doesn't, completely. The day of the party, I remember stepping outside for maybe 10 minutes. Just to take a call. I left my bag inside. On the chair. Near the kitchen. And when I came back in, everything looked exactly the same. Nothing out of place. Nothing obvious. But my mom was standing there. Right next to that chair. At the time, it didn't mean anything. Now, it's the only moment that actually fits. And I keep thinking about something else too. Something that, I don't know, maybe some of you have felt before. When someone crosses a line, but does it so calmly, so casually, that you start wondering if the line was even there to begin with. I wonder if I was the only one who just accepted it for so long, who kept adjusting instead of questioning, who kept telling herself it wasn't worth the conflict. Because that feeling, that quiet, constant second-guessing, that's what made everything after this possible. And I didn't realize it yet, but I was already behind. I just didn't know how far. A few days after that, I finally counted it. Not in a dramatic way. No big moment. I was just sitting on the floor in my living room while my son was playing with his toys, and I thought, okay, just do it. Stop guessing. So I took out the blue envelope, opened it, and this time, I actually paid attention. Counted slowly. Twice. Then a third time, because I thought I messed up. It didn't change. It was short. Not by $1 or $2. By enough that I felt it in my chest. Like that drop you get when you miss a step. I sat there for a while after that. The money still in my hands. Trying to reconstruct everything. Who gave what? What cards I remembered. What felt missing. And I kept landing in the same place. There was no way this was right. But here's the thing. Even then, even with the numbers in front of me, I still tried to explain it away. Maybe I misremembered. Maybe some cards didn't have money in them. Maybe I counted wrong earlier, even though I hadn't counted at all. That's how deep it goes sometimes. The need to make things make sense, even when they don't. So I did something small. Something that felt safe. I texted my cousin. Just casually. Hey, random question. Do you remember if you put anything in the card for Liam? I tried to make it sound like I was organizing thank you notes or something. She replied almost immediately. Yeah, LOL. I put $50 in there. Why? And my stomach just dropped. Because I remembered that card. I remembered her handing it to me. I remembered putting it in the envelope. But there wasn't $50 for her in there anymore. Not even close. I didn't answer her right away. I just stayed at the message, reading it over and over like it might change. Like maybe I misunderstood. But I didn't. That was the first real confirmation. Not a feeling. Not a guess. Something concrete. Something I couldn't smooth over. And still, I didn't confront my mom. I wish I could say I did. That I stood up, called her, demanded an explanation. But I didn't. I just sat with it. Let it settle in slowly. Because once I said it out loud, once I made it real, there was no going back. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying the party, trying to notice things I hadn't noticed before. who was where, when I left the room, what she was doing. And one moment kept coming back, over and over. That 10-minute gap, when I stepped outside, when my bag was left alone, when she was standing near it when I came back. It was the only window that made sense. The next morning, I woke up with this weird calm, like my brain had already decided something before I caught up. I didn't call her. I didn't accuse her. I didn't even bring it up. Instead, I cleaned. I don't know why. Maybe I needed something I could control, something that didn't feel messy. And that's when I noticed something I hadn't paid attention to before, the small camera. It was tucked on the shelf in the corner of the living room. Not hidden, exactly, but not obvious either. I had bought it months ago, after a package went missing from my doorstep. Just a cheap indoor camera, motion activated, connected to an app one barely checked. And suddenly, that quiet thought came back, stronger this time. Just check. I almost didn't. Again. Because there was still a part of me that didn't want to see it, didn't want to confirm it, didn't want to turn this into something bigger than I could handle. But I opened the app anyway, scrolled back, found the date, the time. And at first, it looked like nothing. Just people moving around, kids running, background noise, normal. I almost closed it. I really did. And then, I saw her. Not doing anything wrong. Not yet. Just standing there, near the chair, near my bag. And I felt this strange wave of relief. Like, see, it's nothing. You were wrong. I actually smiled a little. I hate admitting that now. But I kept watching. Just a little longer. Just to be sure. And that's when something shifted. Not in a big way. Not dramatic. She looked around. Quickly. Subtly. And then, she moved closer. The video didn't have sound, so I couldn't hear anything. But I didn't need to. Her body language changed. Just enough. And she reached for my bag. I paused the video. My hand was shaking. Actually shaking. And for a second, just 1 second, I told myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe she was moving it. Maybe she was checking something for me. Maybe. I hit play. And I watched her open it. Slowly. Carefully. She didn't rush. She didn't look nervous. She looked practiced. That's the part that hit me the hardest. Not panic. Not hesitation. Familiarity. And then, she took something out. I couldn't see exactly how much, but I saw it. Clear enough. She folded it, put it in her pocket, closed the bag, adjusted it, and then stepped away. Like nothing happened. I stopped the video again, and just sat there, staring at the screen. Because now, there was no version of this that made sense anymore. Not the kind I could explain away. Not the kind I could ignore. But even then, even after seeing it, I wasn't ready for what it actually meant. Because one question kept pushing its way in, louder than everything else. If she did it that easily, that calmly, then how many times hadn't I noticed? I didn't watch the rest of the video right away. I couldn't. It was like my brain had reached some kind of limit, and anything more would just spill over into something I couldn't control. So I closed the app, put my phone down, and just sat there. My son was still playing on the floor, completely unaware, laughing at something his toy was doing. And I remember thinking, how is this happening in the same room? How can something feel so normal and completely wrong at the same time? I picked up the envelope again, opened it, stared at the money like it might suddenly rearrange itself into something that made sense. But it didn't. And I think that's when the first wave hit. Not anger. Not yet. Just this heavy, sinking realization. She took it. There wasn't another explanation anymore. No misunderstanding. No maybe. Just that. I thought I'd feel something bigger. Like this immediate explosion of emotion. But it was quieter than that. Almost numb. I told myself I needed to think. To be calm. To not overreact. Because once I reacted, everything would change. And I wasn't ready for that yet. So I did what I always did. I minimized it. It's not that much money. She probably needed it. Maybe she was going to tell me. I actually thought that. And saying it now feels embarrassing. But at the time, it felt like survival. Like if I made it smaller, I wouldn't have to face how big it really was. I even convinced myself to go about my day like nothing happened. I made lunch, folded laundry, answered messages. Normal. Everything was normal. That was the false calm, and I didn't even realize I was in it. Later that afternoon, my mom called. Like she always did. Same tone. Same rhythm. "Hey, just checking in." And for a second, I almost answered like nothing had changed. Like I didn't know. Like I hadn't seen anything. But something stopped me. Not anger. Not confrontation. Just awareness. I let it ring. She called again. I didn't pick up. A text came through a minute later. "Everything okay?" And I just stared at it, because suddenly that question felt different. "Everything okay?" I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I opened the camera app again. And this time, I kept watching. I went back further. Before the moment I had seen. Before she reached into my bag. And that's when the second wave hit. Because it wasn't the first time. There were other clips. Short ones. From earlier that same day. Moments I hadn't even remembered. At one point, she walked past my bag. Didn't stop. Didn't touch it. Then came back. A few minutes later. Looked around. Again. And that same movement. That same calm. Like she was deciding when it was safe. And then, there was another clip. Different day. Not the party. My stomach dropped before I even understood why. It was from 2 weeks earlier. I watched it 3 times. Because the first time didn't fully register. She was in my apartment. Alone. I must have stepped out. Or gone to pick something up. I don't even remember. But there she was. Standing in the same spot. Near the same chair. And she did it again. Not the envelope this time. My wallet. Opened it. Paused. Took something out. Closed it. Same movements. Same calm. Like it was routine. I actually felt dizzy. Like my body was trying to reject what I was seeing. Because this wasn't one moment anymore. This wasn't a mistake. Or a bad decision. This was a pattern. And suddenly, everything I had brushed off before. All those little moments that didn't quite make sense. They started lining up. The comments about me being forgetful. The way she always seemed to know when I had cash. The way she moved through my space like it was hers. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. I put my phone down again. But this time, it didn't help. Because now I couldn't unsee it. And this is where something in me broke a little. Not in a loud way. Not dramatic. Just a quiet shift. Because it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about trust. About space. About the fact that I had let someone have access to my life. And they had used it like that. And the worst part. I had helped make it easy. I gave her the key. I let her come and go. I didn't question anything. I told myself it was normal. That this is what support looked like. And now I was sitting there, realizing. I didn't even know where the boundaries were anymore. Or if they ever were any. I think that's when the anger finally started. Not explosive. But steady. And underneath it, something else. Clarity. But before I go further, I need to stop here for a second. Because there's something I didn't tell you yet. Something I didn't even fully admit to myself until I saw those clips again. This wasn't the first time I had noticed money missing. I just never said it out loud. There were small things before. Cash I thought I misplaced. An extra 20 that didn't add up. Moments where I check my wallet and feel that same hesitation. But I always found a way to explain it. Blame myself. Move on. Seeing those videos didn't just show me what she did that day. It showed me what I had been ignoring for months. And suddenly, this wasn't one betrayal. It was a pattern I had been living inside. Without even realizing it. I didn't cry. That's the part that still feels strange to me. Because it should have been the moment where everything hit at once. The anger, the betrayal, the hurt. But instead, everything just went quiet. Like my brain had finally stopped trying to protect me. Stopped making excuses. Stopped softening things. And what was left was just clay. Cold almost. She had been taking money from me. From my son. More than once. Not impulsively. Not by accident. Deliberately. And the worst part wasn't even the amount. It was how easily she did it. How normal it looked. That's what I couldn't shake. I remember sitting there, staring at the wall, and thinking, okay, now what? Because knowing something is wrong and deciding what to do about it are two completely different things. Part of me wanted to call her immediately, confront her, demand an explanation. But I already knew how that would go. She'd deflect, minimize, turn it into something else. Or worse, she'd make me feel like I was overreacting, like I had misunderstood, like I was being dramatic over a few dollars. And I realized something in that moment that made everything click into place. If I confronted her without anything solid, I would lose, not because I was wrong, but because she was better at controlling the narrative. And I was tired of second-guessing myself. So I didn't call her. Instead, I opened my phone again. Not the camera this time. Something else. And this is the part one haven't said out loud before. I had already started documenting things. Before the birthday. Not fully. Not seriously. Just small notes. Dates where something felt off. Amounts that didn't quite match. Moments I couldn't explain but didn't want to forget. At the time, I told myself it was just me being organized. But now, looking back, I think a part of me already knew. I just wasn't ready to face it yet. So I went through everything. The notes, the clips, the timeline. And for the first time, it all lined up. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to show a pattern. Enough to show intent. And something shifted in me again. Not emotional this time. Practical. I stopped asking why. Stopped trying to understand her reasons. And started thinking about consequences. What did I actually want to happen? That question sat with me for a long time. Because the answer wasn't simple. I didn't want a huge explosion. I didn't want screaming or drama or a scene in front of family. But I also didn't want to let it go. Not again. And that's where it got complicated. Because there was a version of this where I stayed quiet. Where I changed the locks. Kept my distance. Protected myself and my son. Without ever saying anything. And honestly, that version felt easier. Cleaner. Less messy. But it also felt like letting her get away with it. And I couldn't ignore that feeling. This is where I started questioning myself. Really questioning. Was I about to overreact? Was I turning something private into something bigger than it needed to be? Because once I crossed a certain line, there was no undoing it. And I remember thinking, what if this destroys everything? What if I regret it later? What if I'm wrong in how I handle this? I don't know. Maybe some of you have been in that place before, where you know something isn't right, but you're not sure if acting on it will make things better, or just worse in a different way. Because this wasn't just anyone. This was my mom. And even after everything I saw, that still mattered. But then, another thought came in. Quiet, but steady. What happens if I don't do anything? And that one felt heavier. Because I already knew the answer. Nothing would change. She would keep doing it. Maybe not right away. Maybe she'd be more careful. But it wouldn't stop. And my son would grow up around that. Around blurred lines. Around someone who took things that weren't hers. And acted like it was normal. And I couldn't accept that. That was the moment the decision made itself. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just final. I wasn't going to argue with her. I wasn't going to accuse her. I was going to make it undeniable. And that's when I thought about the envelope. The plain white one I had seen on the counter that morning. At the time, it didn't mean anything. Just another piece of mail. But now, it felt different. Because I realized something. If I handled this the right way, she wouldn't be able to laugh it off. She wouldn't be able to twist it. She wouldn't be able to pretend it didn't happen. There would be a record. A line she couldn't step back across. And that idea, as uncomfortable as it was, felt like the only way forward. So I made one decision. Just one. I reported it. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Quietly. Through the proper channels. I submitted the evidence. The clips. The notes. The timeline. And then, I waited. I didn't tell her. I didn't warn her. I just let it move forward. And I told myself it was the right thing. That I was protecting my child. That I was finally setting a boundary. But I won't pretend it felt clean. Because even now, there's a part of me that still wonders. Did I go too far? The waiting was the worst part. Not the decision. Not even the video. The waiting. Because once I submitted everything, there was nothing left for me to do. No control. No way to speed it up. Just time. And silence. My mom kept calling. At first, I ignored it. Then I answered once. Just to see. She sounded normal. Too normal. Talking about groceries. Asking about my son. Telling me she might stop by later. And I remember holding the phone, listening to her, knowing what I knew, and feeling like I was standing in two completely different realities at the same time. I said I was busy, kept it short, hung up. She didn't push, which somehow made it worse, because it meant she didn't know yet. And that gave me this strange, uncomfortable feeling, like I was holding something heavy, and just waiting for it to drop. A few days passed. Nothing happened. No calls. No emails. No updates. And I started to doubt everything again. Not what I saw. That part was clear. But what I did. I kept replaying it in my head. The moment I submitted the report. The way my finger hovered before I hit send. And now I was asking myself, was that too much? Should I have handled it privately? Should I have just talked to her? Because this wasn't small anymore. This wasn't just between us. This was official. And once something becomes official, it doesn't just disappear. I barely slept during those days. Every sound felt louder. Every notification made my heart jump. And then, it happened. Not with a phone call. Not with a warning. With that envelope. The same kind I had seen on the counter before. Plain. White. Unmarked. Except this time. It had her name on it. I wasn't there when she got it. I didn't plan it that way. But I found out almost immediately. Because she called me. Not like before. Not calm. Not controlled. Panicked. I answered without thinking. And the second I heard her voice, I knew. What did you do? No greeting. No build-up. Just that. Sharp. Shaking. And for a second, I didn't say anything. Because hearing it out loud, hearing the fear in her voice, made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. And even as I said it, I knew it sounded thin. There was a pause. Then, this letter. Emma, what is this? They are saying. She stopped, like she couldn't even finish the sentence. And that's when something inside me shifted again. Not guilt. Not exactly. But awareness. Because this reaction, this wasn't something I had fully pictured. I had imagined anger, denial, maybe even manipulation. But not this. Not panic. You need to tell me what you did, she said. And her voice was different now. Less controlled. More human. And for a second, just a second, I felt something I didn't expect. Hesitation. Because this was the moment. The one where everything tipped that I could still step back. Still say it was a mistake. Still soften it. And that thought hit me harder than I expected. Had I gone too far? Because hearing her like that, scared, confused, it didn't match the version of her I had been holding on to. The calm, calculated version from the video. This felt different. And I had to sit with that. Right there. In real time. I didn't do anything, I said finally. Which wasn't entirely true. But it wasn't a lie either. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, Emma, they're accusing me of taking money from a minor. She said it like the words didn't belong together. Like they couldn't possibly apply to her. And I closed my eyes. Because hearing it like that, so official, so stripped down, it sounded worse than I had let myself think. This is serious, she said. Her voice dropped. Quieter now. I could get in trouble for this. And there it was. The weight of it. Not just between us anymore. Not just emotional. Real. I know, I said. That was it. Just those two words. And the silence that followed felt endless. Because I think that's when she understood. Not fully. Not all the details. But enough. You reported me, she said. Not a question. And I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her breathing changed. I could hear it through the phone. Faster. Unsteady. And for a moment, I thought she might start yelling. But she didn't. She just said, why? And that question hit differently than everything else. Because I had an answer. A clear one. But saying it out loud, to her, felt heavier than I expected. Because you took it, I said. Simple. direct. And there was no space left for anything else. The line went quiet. Then, a small sound. Not a word. Something like a breath catching. And for a second, I almost broke. Almost said something softer. Almost tried to explain it in a way that hurt less. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about making it easier anymore. And then, the line went dead. She hung up. And I just sat there, phone still in my hand, heart racing. Because even though everything had gone exactly the way it needed to, it didn't feel like a win. It felt like something had just ended. And I didn't know what was coming next. She didn't call back that day, or the next. And at first, I thought maybe that was it. Maybe everything had just snapped. Clean break. Silence where there used to be constant noise. It should have felt peaceful. But it didn't. It felt unfinished. Like something was still moving underneath it all. Something I couldn't see yet. A few days later, I heard from my aunt. Not directly about what happened. Not at first. She called me, her voice careful, like she was stepping around something fragile. Your mom's been really upset, she said. I didn't respond right away. I just listened. She got some kind of letter, she added. Lower this time. So it had spread. Of course it had. Family doesn't keep things like that quiet. Not really. I could feel it already. The shift. The way conversations would change when I walked into a room. The way people would look at me like they were trying to figure out what version of the story was true. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. Not yet. Because honestly, I didn't even know how to explain it in a way that didn't sound unreal. My mom stole money from my child, so I reported her. It sounds so simple when you say it like that. But it didn't feel simple. Not even close. A few more days passed before I saw her again. It wasn't planned. I had gone to pick up my son from my aunt's house, and she was there, sitting at the kitchen table. For a second, I froze. Actually froze. Like my body didn't know what to do. And she looked up. We didn't speak right away. It was quiet in that strange way where everyone else suddenly has something to do. My aunt stepped into another room. My son was in the living room. And it was just us. She looked different. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone else might notice. But I did. She seemed smaller. Not physically. Just less certain. Her posture wasn't as straight. Her expression wasn't as controlled. And for a second, just a second, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not manipulation. Not confidence. Just uncertainty. I didn't think you'd do that, she said. Her voice was quiet. Not angry. Not loud. And I didn't know how to respond to that. Because part of me wanted to say, I didn't think you'd do it either. But I didn't. We just stood there. Two people looking at each other like strangers who shared too much history. I needed help, she said after a moment. And there it was. Not an excuse. Not exactly. But not an apology either. Just a statement. And this is the part that confused me the most. Because for the first time, she sounded honest. Not polished. Not controlled. Just tired. I was going to put it back, she added. Quickly. Like she needed to fill the space. And I felt something shift in my chest. Not enough to undo anything. But enough to make it complicated. Because this moment, it wasn't the version of her I had been holding on to. This wasn't the woman from the video. Calm. Calculated. This was someone else. And I didn't know what to do with that. You didn't, I said. Not harsh. Not soft. Just true. She nodded. Slowly. I know. And then she looked down. And for a second, just a second, she didn't have anything to say. No defense. No explanation. Just silence. That was the moment that stayed with me. Not the letter. Not the phone call. That. Because it made everything less clear. I wanted it to be simple. I wanted her to be one thing. Either completely wrong. Or somehow still right. But she wasn't. She was both. And that made it harder. Not easier. I didn't think you'd go that far, she said again. And I realized something in that moment. She still didn't fully understand why I did it. Not really. To her, it was still about the reaction. The consequence. Not the pattern. Not the trust. not everything that led up to it. And I could have explained it. I could have gone through every detail, every moment, every realization. But I didn't, because I don't think she was ready to hear it. Or maybe I wasn't ready to say it. So we stood there, in that space, not resolved, not repaired, just aware. And that was it. No dramatic ending, no closure, just distance. I took my son home after that. Life didn't go back to normal, but it didn't fall apart either. It just changed. I changed. The locks got replaced. The key didn't go back. Boundaries, real ones, finally existed. And she stayed, outside of them. Not completely gone, but not the same. We still talk. Sometimes. Short conversations. Careful ones. There's always something unspoken sitting underneath. And I don't know if that will ever go away. But there's one thing I keep thinking about. Something that didn't make sense before, and still doesn't fully, even now. When she said, "I didn't think you'd go that far." It made me wonder. How far did she think she could go? I've replayed all of it more times than I can count. Not just the big moments. Not just the video or the call or that conversation in my aunt's kitchen. The small things. The quiet ones. The ones that didn't feel important at the time. Because now I know. Those were the parts that mattered most. I keep thinking about that version of me from before all of this. The one who didn't question things. Who let comments slide. Who handed over space, slowly, piece by piece. Until there wasn't much left that felt fully hers. And I don't blame her. I really don't. She thought she was doing the right thing. Keeping the peace. Being respectful. Trusting family. Those things aren't wrong. But they can stretch too far. And when they do, you don't always notice right away. It doesn't feel like something is being taken from you. It feels like you're just adjusting. That's the part one wish I understood sooner. Because none of this started with the envelope. Not really. It started way before that. In small moments where I ignored what I felt. Where I told myself I was overthinking. Where I chose comfort over clarity. And I get why I did that. Clarity is uncomfortable. It forces you to see things as they are. Not as you wish they were. But once you see it, really see it, you can't go back. I think that's what changed the most. Not just my relationship with my mom. My relationship with myself. I trust myself more now. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it leads to harder choices. Because ignoring that voice, the one that says something isn't right, doesn't make things better. It just delays the moment you have to face it. And sometimes, that delay costs more than you realize. I still think about that day in the kitchen. The way she looked at me. The way her voice sounded when she said she needed help. And I don't hate her. I know that might sound strange after everything. But I don't. What she did was wrong. Clear. Undeniable. But that moment, that small, human moment, it reminded me that people aren't just one thing. And that doesn't excuse anything. It doesn't undo what happened. It just makes it real. Messy. Uncomfortable in a way that doesn't give you a clean ending. There are still things we don't talk about. Things we probably never will. And maybe that's what this is now. Not closure. Not resolution. Just distance with awareness. I know where my boundaries are. And for the first time, I know I'll keep them there. Even if it costs me something. Because some things are more expensive than money. Trust. Peace. The way you feel in your own space. Those things matter more than I understood before. And if you've ever been in a situation where something felt off, but you couldn't quite prove it, I guess the only thing I'd ask is this. Have you ever ignored something small, only to realize later it was never small at all? So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Emma voice travels. Protect what feels right, even when it's hard to explain why.